Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. Without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I wanted to have a little discussion with you about the impact of your Scrum Master. So I've had a lot of questions lately from folks who are asking, how do you measure the impact of your Scrum Master? How do you gauge whether or not you have a good Scrum Master? And, I thought before we get into the crux of this, let's take a look at some of the core responsibilities of what a Scrum Master should do. First and foremost, I believe they should have three focus areas. So first and foremost, they need to make sure that they're serving the team. It's their responsibility to use whatever tools they can, creativity and practicality, to help the team be successful and release high value increments. That's just the way it is, right? So I think it's important for us to make sure that we have a Scrum Master that understands that their primary role is to serve the team. Second is to serve the product owner. Now, that might sound a little bit off, but it's true. The product owner needs the Scrum Master to support them in such a way that they're supporting effective goals, effective delivery, effective vision and strategy, effective backlog management, making sure the empirical process happens, and giving those developers an avenue to speak directly with the stakeholders if necessary. And finally, the third value, or the third thing that the third objective of the Scrum Master is to serve the organization. So they're supposed to help support the Scrum adoption, a vision, act as a coach, do all those things that you might expect on an Agile implementation, right? So while these are all very, very important things to do, I think that sometimes the following parts slip by the wayside. Sometimes people forget that the Scrum Master is a supportive role. It's not a management role. So when you're trying to measure effectiveness of someone in a supporting role, their success can't be measured by directly looking at what they do. You have to look at how they impact the success of others. So in a supporting role, the Scrum Master certainly would play a role in helping other people be successful, but it's hard to measure the success that they have themselves. So if you're looking at how a Scrum Master assists others in growing, or how they help teams reach high performing. Those are all good metrics that you can look at, but I don't know that there's any quantitative data that you can have that's going to say that just because a team became high performing and it was the Scrum Master's responsibility, or because the team didn't make it high performing and it was the Scrum Master's fault. So I think you have to look at the role holistically and understand that it is a supportive role. Next, you need to understand that team roles themselves can be complex, right? That it's hard to just understand, what effect the Scrum Master is going to have unless you understand the effect of all of the supporting cast. So a good comparison for this, or a good example, my good friend, Bill, he is the Agile Financial, and he brought up in one of our AgileDad University episodes, talking about how Agile and working out go together. And he was talking about having a personal trainer. He says, if your personal trainer is effective, you'll see success, you'll feel better, you'll look better, etc. He says, but just because you don't look better or feel better doesn't mean you have a poor personal trainer. And I thought, that does make sense, right? Sometimes you're just not working hard enough or doing the things that you need to do. So I guess you can ask yourself, how did the teams grow, or did the teams grow? Are the teams grateful that they had the Scrum Master's contribution in helping them resolve issues and get to where they need to be? And I think what I'm seeing here is that some of the metrics that I see that people are using are a combination of things. So, of course, one thing that should be, avoided but often isn't, is oftentimes you find management looking at key value indicators. They'll start looking at output measures, like velocity or reliability or system uptime. Those aren't great, but you need to make sure you're focused on things like impact. How did the delivery impact customers? Things like that. Harder to measure, but still should be a key value and something that you can figure out. Second tool that I see people use to measure is the growth of the Scrum team. This is where you look at the team and you'll say, hey, how are they doing? Are the developers happy? Are the end users satisfied? Are the stakeholders happy? Is the product owner happy? And I think that if you use this ownership model of figuring out whether or not the Scrum Master is being effective, that's another good way to measure. And third and finally, you want to measure the growth of coaches or other Scrum Masters that surround them. Are they working together to help create an environment to make sure that everyone can be successful? Or are they limiting their success to only the things that they're working on? Simply put, one of the big goals of a Scrum Master, and I say this all the time, is to work their way out of their job. They need to create an environment that's so good and so natural that everybody is so comfortable that they're able to do their job so effectively that they almost feel like they don't need to be there, so that they can help mentor and uplift others and get others to that very same position. Now, as with all good things, there are pitfalls, right? Just because a Scrum Master does their job effectively and gets the team completely healthy, all it takes is 1 ounce of poison from someone else to destroy all the work the Scrum Master's done. So it's hard for the Scrum Master to be in an environment where they can get to this point with their teams and with their product owners and not have something go wrong. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you have to also be aware that pitfalls do exist, and you got to be careful because you don't want to be on the receiving end of one of these pitfalls if you can help it. Another one is sometimes we either have too many or too few Scrum Masters. I know that sounds weird, but if you have too many people trying to take on a Scrum Master position, what you'll quickly find is that it's overburdening to everyone involved. The whole team just gets swamped. It becomes ugly real quick, right? So if you have too few Scrum Masters, you'll find that they're running themselves ragged and that nobody's going to see an increase in effectiveness. So it's definitely interesting to think about that when it comes to the number of Scrum Masters you have and whether you have a good spread. My rule typically is 1 Scrum Master, 1 team. Unless they're really advanced, then it's 1 Scrum Master, 2 teams. And if they're a strong Agile coach, 1 Scrum Master can suitably govern 3 teams, but never more than 3. And I think that the last thing we have to consider is that over time, the role of Agile leadership shifts. And I think that initially you have PMO directors and VPs and other people who want to run the Agile squad and make sure the Agile implementation happens the way that they want it to. But I think the role of the Agile leader does shift. We talked about the Scrum Master and product owner being Agile leaders in a previous podcast episode, but I think that it's important just to recognize that they are going to lead the charge and that they're going to help make sure we have effective impact. So I hope this information was helpful to you. I hope you learned a lot today. As always, I encourage you to visit agiledad.com where you can learn more about this topic and many others. And I hope that you'll be an effective Scrum Master, not just this week, but into the future. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.